Czech Firearms Podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome to Czech Firearms Podcast. My name is Carl. This is Lucas, and we have here Christopher, which is our guest, Christopher Rosewarne.
Hi.
Who's a British guy living in Prague, and he's film industry concept designer, but more importantly, movie guns designer. Mm-hmm. Hey Christopher, welcome
guys.
to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation, as always. I need to note that we are at the workshop of Alornis Industry, so big thanks to Richard, who is the owner of this place and who gave us a place to be and place to record this podcast. So big thumbs up and thank you very much for having us.
Yeah.
All right, so usually we start with a question: how did you get into guns? Mm-hmm. Is it a relevant question in your case also?
Kind of. I mean, I think as any boy growing up, kind of watched Star Wars, cowboys and Indians movies, and you kind of make pistols shape with your fingers and play, kind of whatever, goodies and baddies in the playground with your friends. I had a toy cap gun. That's what we call them. They had those reels of paper.
The red one.
So it was usually a revolver, right? With the little cap, so it goes bang.
It was like a pressed, just really kind of lightweight revolver, and you put in this paper reel, and it had these little.
Oh
caps. I used to love them.
It was so hard to get those. I had the revolver, but I couldn't get the little caps to go bang.
Yeah. And then as soon as it stopped going bang, 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 it just. And my dad would always say, "No, you've used it. That's it. Done until you have more pocket money to buy the next one."
Yeah.
So that was your beginning with the guns. But do you have a firearms license?
I don't. I met you guys 2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago, yes.
2 years ago, and I went shooting at your range, and man, that was so much fun. Like, and here's the funny thing: as a designer, and as an artist, like there's an aesthetic to the whole kind of. That military industry, with a lot of it just being CNC'd machine metal, and that's the stuff that I love. And there's an aesthetic to guns and firearms, and I've always been very drawn to that. But I am terrified of the real thing, and I think that's perhaps like a good approach to have to it, because it means I respect the hell out of it. And you guys were so nice and super casual, and we went to the range, and here you go, Chris, here's a gun. And I think the closest I've got to it in the past, I did some shooting at a range at a stag party a couple of years ago, but. I mean, I know I can point down range and pull the trigger, but I was still deferring to you and being like, look, okay, I've not properly shot. Show me what's what. And you kind of took me through things and started shooting. And I was very nervous for a couple of rounds and then was getting into it more. But it's funny because like when you're there and you're holding that thing, the concentration and the respect and kind of the focus, it's quite a meditation in a way. Like
that's what we love, man.
You're not thinking of like work or bills or job. It's just very much in the moment,
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things like that in life.
That's
that I
our
find.
group therapy.
Yeah.
What we have different groups.
I totally get it, because it's just sort of, you spend kind of an hour or so there and you feel very centered afterwards.
Yeah.
You smell of fireworks, but like you're very centered.
Yeah, I just forget about things.
Well, for some people it's riding a motorbike. For some people it's building little scale models. Mm. So they get into this kind of zone of super relaxed feeling. But back to your job as a movie gun designer or concept designer.
Yeah.
Can you?
I'll give you the intro. I'll give you the intro to it, and we can sort of hop through the guns actually, because. I watched. I really got into movies as a kid, and I was always, drawing the spaceships from Star Wars and the X-wing fighters and stuff like this, and very much got into movies as I was growing up, and used to watch a lot of films that were very inappropriate for me at the time. I was very much into horror and sci-fi, and. I remember standing in the video shop and looking at the cover of this VHS. That's going to date me. Old school video store. There we go, video store. Don't have those anymore.
Yeah. We remember that.
And looking at the copy of this movie called Aliens by James Cameron, and it had it didn't have Schwarzenegger on the front. It had Sigourney Weaver holding a girl, and she had this gun, and I couldn't quite tell what it was, but it looked really big, looked amazing. And she had it over her shoulder and she looked absolutely terrified, but she was confronting it and she was protecting this girl who was clinging to her. And I was like, man, what's this?
Epic.
Turn it over. Not only that, but on the back, she's in this yellow industrial machine, the power loader. And I'm like, my God. And my friend had seen it. Goes, oh yeah, she fights the Queen alien with this thing. And I'm oh my God. So it was really kind of it's the tech. It's the tech that I'm drawn to. And I think also as a child, my father used to take me to the local shopping centre that was being built. And they had all these big JBC diggers and stuff. And I think they just used to look like metal monsters. Pistons and hoses and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just absolutely, it's an aesthetic I've always loved, that sort of industrial design, heavy design. And then I saw this movie Aliens, and I just thought the hardware and everything, like the tank, the power loader, the weapons, the movie just imprinted on my mind, and I was constantly drawing that stuff. And I've met a couple of friends in the film industry, shout out to Matt, who had a similar kind of experience and exposure to this stuff, and I would be drawing it. And it was called the Colt M41A pulse rifle, and it was basically a Thompson machine gun converted that was fitted with a FAMAS pump-action shotgun on the underside as a grenade launcher, and then they put some cladding on it and dressed it up to make it look like this fantastic movie prop. And I just thought it was the sexiest thing ever. And it had this digital LED counter on it as well. And then they had this one called the Smart Gun, which was I'm probably going to get killed in the comments if I get this wrong, but I think it's a Bren machine gun, if that was right. And it's mounted to a camera Steadicam arm. So it was on this rig, and so it's on this armored Steadicam harness and this thing, and it just looked like such amazing technology. And they had all this headsets and stuff, and I was just blown away by that. And so constantly designing these things, because I thought they were so cool. It was less about them being the function of a gun, but more about it was a weapon, and it just looked cool. And drawing it all the time, drawing the tank, drawing that power loader, and I saw RoboCop. And the original RoboCop movie, and there's this thing, that suit design was phenomenal. The Ed 209 robot,
at the time,
amazing.
Yeah.
And I was 10 when I saw that, and
too early,
but that burned itself in. Like, I was drawing that stuff all the time. But I didn't get the satire, the satirical comedy in it, and so Paul Verhoeven, to kind of deal with the violence, overdid the violence. But the edit that we got in the UK was trimmed by the censors. So in that opening scene where there's that guy, I think Kenny, getting shot in the boardroom.
Right, yeah. They shoot off his hand.
The original cut. No. When they're having the meeting in the
meeting
office,
with the Ed 209.
Yeah. And if you watch the original cut on YouTube, it's supposed to be kind of like this hit of this something, very, very graphic violence, followed by this very funny comment, because the shooting goes on for 20 seconds. Bam, 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 bam. And there's the cameras on the body, just stuff there's just nothing of him left. And then the comment is, call a paramedic. True. But they cut it. And so in the UK, he gets shot for about 5 seconds, but that was enough. So in the way, the censors reduced it. It's a bit like... the Evil Dead movies were very over the top in their gore. Yeah. Excuse me. So the censors kind of reduced it and made it into it kind of came across as more violent, because there was no satire in the violence. It was just very there, So
it's extremely violent, and with RoboCop, he's having that fully automatic Beretta 93R prolonged, and
and I love the muzzle. That sort of tri-star muzzle flare. That two came out the side, one on the top, and I just thought it was so and again it folded into his leg, and and
it was amazing.
As a 10, 12-year-old, I just thought that was just so cool.
I almost forgot about it.
I was so influenced by this movie that I had to buy myself the Beretta 87 Target, which it's a 22, but looks really close to what RoboCop had. I was I have to have it. It's amazing.
I just thought it's fantastic. And did the extension that they put on it, is that the prop part, or does that exist somewhere? Because I know
We can definitely look it up in Internet Movie Firearms database. But I think it can be functional. I don't think it must be a prop.
I work for this. Growing up as a high school student in the UK, we were required at the time to do 2 weeks work placement. So it was pick an industry or an area that you would like to experience work in, and I was into movies and comics and stuff. So I used to go to this shop called Forbidden Planet, which was a comic book shop in London. And I sent them a letter, because this was pre-email, saying like, I'm a student of Acton High, and can I come and do work experience? And so you go there and you work for free, but you experience what life might be like in your kind of chosen industry. And the cool thing about that is they had a comic department, a film department, and they had kind of a toys department. And in the toys department, there was an airsoft counter. And me and my friends we were all about 15 at the time. And I think we had to be 17 to buy an air gun in the UK. So the air gun laws applied to airsoft. And we'd all hit about like 6 foot plus. So we were 15, but we were kind of borderline, like we could get away with. So we started buying these BB guns. And I remember in the back, they had the Robocop, and it was sold as a Robocop thing, and it was the Beretta, and you could stick on this extension. Nice. And I loved all that stuff. So I was buying a lot of BB guns, very much into comics, very much into movies. But that was sort of my love and exposure for that stuff, and so it bled through from also kind of guns and tech, but also spaceships and vehicles. So it kind of all fell under the same umbrella. But I've always had a bit of what's the bird in Czech? We call it magpie. It's known for stealing things.
Kafka, yeah.
Kafka, yeah. So we call it magpie eye. It's like, oh, like you see something, you gotta take it. So
the absolute attraction.
Yeah, I mean, we're in this workshop now, and like it's just full of just such cool stuff. My eyes are going off, and I've already asked if I can take reference photos in here. It's lots of cool stuff.
It's an inspiring place. No doubt about it.
So we can probably talk a lot about the movies that inspired you.
Yeah, but you can see I'm going to go off tangent. So
that's fine.
Yeah, so keep me on track.
Yeah. So what was the driving you to make this kind of hobby, the attraction you had, into your profession? That must be. You just said one day, this is what I want to do, and find a school for that, or pursue it.
For the average guy, that sounds impossible.
Absolutely.
I was 12, and I came home after school, and I sat down next to my dad, who was in the garden. He was a very keen gardener. And I sat down and I just burst into tears going, I don't know what I want to do, because they'd had kind of like a careers day at school. And it seemed like there were 3 jobs in the world: fireman, doctor, and policeman.
Of course.
And all my class were very happy being one of the 3. And I didn't want to be any of those. And I got all nervous because suddenly I'm being left behind. And like, I don't know what I want to do. And I came home and I said to my dad, I was like, I don't know what I want. I don't want to be a fireman. I don't want to be a policeman. Because I was creative, right? Like I had this sort of fantasy mind that was just very happy, like, just give me pen and paper and I can just sit there and draw, humming the theme tune to whatever movie it was, And I genuinely didn't know what to do. And the older I got, like through my teens, the more I guess I started to kind of be a little bit worried, because my parents were creatives. They were textile designers, and all their friends were creatives as well, kind of artists and illustrators. And so I was very much aware of, they would be complaining all the time, and I'd see my parents struggle. And I think it's like a lot of freelance creatives, there's often this sort of feast and famine, like when it's good, and when it's bad, it's pretty bad, and you struggle quite a lot. And when people struggle, they're very vocal about it. And so I grew up with, oh my God, shit, here are these amazing illustrators, and they're struggling for work. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. So I kind of veered away from illustration, and my interest in horror movies morphed into makeup special effects. And I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist. And I went to the library and I started getting all these books on special effects makeup. And at age 12 and 13, I had this makeup box on my desk, because I was really kind of training at an early age. And I had all these books as well of like how to do all this stuff. And I'd be doing these horrendous like 3rd-degree burns and like, you know, pencils through the hand, like blood. They look really good, and my metric for how successful the effect was that I would go down and show my mum, and the more upset, but not only that, angry and kind of concerned, I was like, yes, this is really kind of doing it. It wasn't about glorifying violence. It was like the ultimate magic trick, you know, because it was like clearly I hadn't done I hadn't done it to myself, but it's still, the question was asked of like, how did you do that? But so it felt like this amazing illusion that I created with some skills that I developed.
Terrifying moments for parents.
Yeah. Well, I asked my dad, I said like, well, because I've got a son who's 14 and I'm kind of watching what he's doing. And I kind of like, I then see with father's eyes, and I said to my dad, like, God, you know, I was watching RoboCop and Aliens, and I'm buying these horror magazines. I said, did you ever have a concern? And he laughed and he said, no, because it was very, very clearly channeled through a creative door. You know, there was very, very clearly a creative channel there. And so even though I'm kind of playing with stuff that kind of, and that's the reaction, that's the power it had, is that it could generate this reaction. And sometimes I would have liked to have, looking back, it would be interesting to see what happened if I would have pursued it.
To be
a special effects makeup artist. And working in movies now, I get to go meet makeup artists and be a bit like, hey, you know, and we can kind of riff on buying those Fangoria magazines and stuff that we got into and all that sort of stuff, which was really nice. But I got out of that because I was doing all this at age 14, 15. Like no one was going to employ me at that age. I don't know why I was so worried. I think it's because I would see my parents struggle quite a bit. So I felt obligated to somehow also trying to, not provide, but trying to kind of help out somehow. I went to art college and I studied foundation, which is you get a year to do a couple of different disciplines. So I did illustration, product design, 3D design. And I was a very good illustrator, of course, but I didn't want to do that because that's what my parents did and they were struggling. And so I went off and I ended up following this kind of model making route because I enjoyed building stuff. And again, growing up with building Lego and, you know, building spaceships and guns with this stuff. I was like, oh, here's an industry where like I can see this, because it's like, you know, there were architectural model makers, there were toy model makers, and there were also model makers in the film industry. I was like, oh, they build spaceships.
Right. Someone needs to do this also.
I can build spaceships. So I did this model making for design and media course at Bournemouth, which is on the south coast of England, at the Bournemouth Arts Institute. And the tutor would go talk into the class of, there must have been about 20 of us, and it was like, okay, how many want to be architectural model makers? And I think a couple of people put their hands up, and they said, who wants to work in film? And everyone put their hand up.
Of course.
But very, very difficult industry to get into. And so we did that for 3 years, and living in London helped with me because I was closer to those industries, and I got work experience at a place called Art and Visual Effects, which they sort of have workshops like this and engineering workshops, and they also did. They'd done some animatronic puppets for this dinosaur documentary, so they would get in.
Oh, okay.
You would see this process where they would get in sculptors who would sculpt the dinosaur head. They would have mold makers who would cast that sculpt in, you know, fiberglass, and then get out this sort of foam latex thing. They'd have engineers who would take the fiberglass head, cut that up, and start mechanizing it, and again kind of machining all this stuff on the mills and CNC lathe. And so this is when I'm looking at all this stuff, and it was almost a shame to put the skin on it, because the animatronic engineers used to take such pride over their work. They would and this was really kind of not really before the days of CNC machine, of computer stuff. It was all done by hand. So they would mark out the patterns on this plate aluminium and mill it out. And then they would take a file and some brass wool, and they would polish it.
Gunsmithing work.
They would polish it all. And then all the holes were countersunk, and there's black anodized Allen key socket head screws go in. And so there's this lovely sort of finish between this polished milled aluminium plate and these black heads, and then there were servos in there, and it was like looking at a big the inside of a Swiss watch or something, especially when you see it turn on and they'd move the eyes and then they'd stick the skin on. You're like, okay, it's a dinosaur.
But it's covered.
And you mentioned that's even before the CNC era, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would send stuff out, but the animatronic guys would stand there at the mill and the lathe doing
that's
stuff.
even more complicated.
Yeah.
Because once you just once you're not focused and you take a different turn,
I did
you just destroy it constantly.
I did 3D design for 2 years, and so we did a lot of like lathing and machining. And sometimes when you weren't paying attention, be like, oh my god, is it left or right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
50. Oh no, damn it. Am I turning to the right or am I turning to the left here? And you go,
and sometimes you just need to take very little of the material, just like a few millimeters. And the old machines specifically, they hit like a little of the wobble. So there's like an empty move, like nothing. You're just turning it.
Yeah,
nothing's
like,
happening.
So this is like 2 millimeters, but nothing is happening.
Yeah, there's a bit of give, and then
you a little bit more, and then you just you take like
gone.
5 off, and you are done.
So I got an exposure to like, so there were these engineers, and then these fabricators, and then they had guys that would be doing kind of the bigger mech stuff that were working with kind of steel sections and big pistons and stuff, and. Whilst I was there, they got the contract to do the movie The Brothers Grimm in Prague.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember that.
Yeah, up at Barrendorf Studios, kind of just up the road here.
Yep.
And so they got in all the more freelancers to do all this stuff, and this is all what I loved. It's like, you know, they had fabricators that would come in and would be dressing things. Like we had to build. There's this enchanted woods in the Brothers Grimm fairy tales where the trees come to life. So we were building these giant sculpting and then building these giant animatronic trees, and just amazing to watch all these professionals come in who have been doing it in the industry. I mean, like had a little bit of workshop experience, but I'd just be over all of their shoulders watching all this stuff and kind of offering to kind of make some bits and pieces.
Sometimes I wonder if people realize how much work is involved in all of those special effects in the movies.
No,
we all enjoy the qualities of that, and we all worship the I was highly inspired by the dinosaurs. Yeah. You know, my childhood was full of dinosaurs. I had lots of books about them. I saw the documentaries, the traveling with the dinosaurs. I don't know what's the English.
Walking with dinosaurs.
But that's BBC, right?
Yes.
I was highly influenced by that because the effects were so good.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'm really in the air millions and millions of years ago, and I'm present there. That's how good it was.
Yes.
But I was like, they did it somehow.
Well, the interesting thing was right after Walking with Dinosaurs, there was another dinosaur documentary done by the BBC, and the this company Artem were commissioned to make these 2 dinosaur heads. So I came in and saw that these 2 heads that they were making. And they'd done it was a saber-toothed tiger, and it was a head of something else, and there was another bird as well, but just amazing stuff.
Yeah. And just if I jump from the past to the present, do you see that there's a less and less usage of the real effects of the animatronics being like pushed away with the CGI and more like computer generated stuff?
I feel like it's kind of achieved a little bit more of a balance, because in kind of off post Terminator and post Jurassic Park, there's a real kind of sense of everything's going to be done in
CGI,
CGI, and it just looked bad. And there's I think as an audience, there was a bit of a rejection to that stuff, and so then it got pushed back, and there was this big thing of like, you could sell a movie by saying, we're doing it in camera, we're making this stuff, but there were still things that needed to be done in CGI. So there's this nice balance now where, generally speaking, when you're looking at a lot of these movies, when an actor needs to be interacting with something, they'll build the prop for it to interact with, and then it might have the CGI extension and the background replacement. So there seems to be sort of a nice balance there. But just to finish off my long and very long story, when we finished The Brothers Grimm, I was seeing all of these designs coming in to the studio of kind of, designs of kind of, there was some sci-fi stuff, and I was holding up, and we were being asked to make it, and it was these marker pen renderings, like product design renderings. And I remember really liking that in college and kind of just almost like remembering this love of like, oh, I really enjoy drawing. And I remember stood there at my workshop and I had this, the red kind of snap-on tool case and stood around with my other colleagues. And I was the youngest one in the workshop. I think I was 24, maybe 24. And just come back from Prague, and I said, I was holding this piece of paper, and I said, I think I want to be in the art department. And I heard this, like, two people went, oh, sighed, and I turned around, and they reached under their desk, and they pulled out this dusty portfolio. And they went, yeah, I studied theatre design. And it was like something from Raiders of the Lost Ark, with Harrison Ford blowing off this ancient dust. Cobwebs, and unzips this art portfolio. And here's this thing. Yeah, I did theatre design, and I was wanted to get into the art department, but the art departments were all crewed up at the time. So I got a job here, and they said it'd be a foot into the industry, and and then I got married and had kids, and I can't quit. And I went, oh, and kind of sort of saw this as the future, and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to have any regrets. Oh, can we swear on this, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Sure.
You potty mouth. And immediately just went upstairs and said politely, I quit. Because I was
really?
Young. Yeah.
Straight away?
Straight away. I got so scared that in 10 years' time, I was going to be like, oh,
wow.
I wish I went into the art. I wanted to go into the art department, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that terrified me more than anything, which was like to just have a job that I kind of liked, but wished I did something else. And I was young enough to be able to just sort of go, okay, I went upstairs and they were about to go, okay, so the next job. And I was like, thank you so much, but I need to go. And they're like, what, really? And I said to them, like, I need to go into the art department. And they were really sweet. They're like, oh, yes, you're good at drawing, aren't you? And I had to go back home. And because I'd spent a couple of years building up a contact list of kind of within the props and special effects departments, I was getting phone calls for the next movies. And I had to be in a position to be able to say no, which meant I had to move home. So I went back and lived with my mum and dad for sort of 2 years and just did drawing. Bought Photoshop, bought a laptop, and just started doing drawing. And I had loads of making of books, and they often had drawings of things in. And there wasn't even really the title concept design. I think I'd seen that first in the Art of Star Wars books. But I started trying to copy what they were doing, and there's this workshop called the Nomon Workshop in LA, which they had started recording concept artists drawing, and so these DVDs were like $70 to $80, and I was having them sent to me, and I'm trying to copy like Ryan Church and Feng Zhu, and trying to like do these things that these guys are doing, and then trying to put myself back out there and cold call art departments. And they would say, sorry, we're crewed up at the moment. And I'd say, yes, I know. Can I just come in and show you my stuff? And when they didn't feel under any pressure to be like, yes or no, they'd be like, oh, okay, sure, come in. And so I slowly built up my my art portfolio. And one of the tipping points for me actually was that I'd met a Czech girl on the movie when I came here on the Brothers Grimm. So I moved out to Prague, and there were a lot of movies coming out to Prague. And so I introduced myself to the productions here as this kind of British guy, could speak Tarzan Czech, but I could do all this stuff in the workshop, and I could do all this stuff in the art department. And so they were like, oh, so we don't have to ship anyone over? And I'm like, no, I'm here, I can do this stuff. And so a lot of the productions that were coming through, I was able to kind of jump on and be in the art department as this new guy. And so that's how I started. And one of my first jobs as a concept designer in Prague was on the movie Doom, the adaptation of the game.
Oh, so violent also, by the way.
Yeah.
I love the game. Yeah. My father always forbid me to use the chainsaw, but I could use the firearms in the game. Yeah, exactly. That was the only limit I had.
Yeah. So I went to that interview, and I sat down and I presented. I'd got this prop making portfolio of all the work I'd built as a special effects technician and prop maker, and they'd seen the movies that they'd been on. So like, I can build this stuff, but I can design it as well. And so there was this nice kind of pairing of, I can design stuff that I know how to build, And on this movie Doom, I met with the set decorator, and he said to me, he said, his eyes lit up actually, because he said the production wouldn't let him ship out any UK model makers. And he's like, "You're here?" I'm like, yeah. My girlfriend's Czech. And he looked at me and he said, "If I pay you to design them," he said, "can you run the model shop afterwards?" And I was like 25, never done it before, but I went, "Sure." And so I was hired. It was really nice. I was working in the set deck department, which is within the art department, drawing this stuff, these sci-fi props. This is back in the days of kind of pen and marker, still doing these things. And then after about 4 months, I went into the workshops at Modrani. We set up in Modrani here. And I had a bunch of guys who had come from art college who were also doing similar kind of fabricating stuff. And we were building a lot of the props and the dressing for Doom. But that was the last time my toolbox was open, and it now sits in my apartment gathering dust, and I'm pure art department. That long story is kind of this sort of me.
But two things. First, I'm surprised that it's so important that you're in the place where the movie's being done, because I was kind of assuming that being a concept designer, you're working on abstract things, you can be on the other side of the planet and just sending it over. So that what was my idea of it. So I'm surprised that being in Prague actually helped you in this way.
Yes, it did. It certainly did back then. I mean, the idea of working remote, as it's called now, would not really fly, and unless you were a very big designer and they were hiring you.
You need to build
something
the
specific,
reputation.
But like, I needed to be part of the art department, because you're there, and a lot of the stuff is, sometimes they've changed something in the script, which means that we have to alter something in the set, and I have to quickly work with one of the art directors who's doing something for their set.
That was my other question. I was So is it still happening that you need to be part of that art process? So you just draw the basics, and then you need to supervise the quality of the 3D model?
That was kind of like, that's sort of like a holdover from my prop making days, and it's something that I enjoy doing, where we will issue the approved design, but then I'll go down and talk to the guys in the workshop. And in fact, because I can imagine quite well how a lot of engineering works, like with my workshop experience, but I'm not as good as their engineering guys.
Yes.
And so one of the things I love doing is, in fact, I did it on the I think it was Mission Impossible 6. We had to design and build kind of like a workshop built nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. And it was all going to be like, I get all this C and seed stuff. And I did some designs, kind of having done like a bunch of research, and my God, my Google history is going to get me into trouble one day. But
like how to build a nuclear bomb home,
but not really. 4 movies, just a joke. LOL. I would take these designs. I'm thinking, well, this looks kind of good, and it can serve the action in the movie. And I would go down to the workshop and call the guys over, and I'm like, right, we'd put these designs down on the table with some reference and stuff, and the guys would be kind of, taking a look, and they'd be kind of rolling their cigarettes to kind of take a little break. Stood around, kind of, I could do it, yeah. And I'd say what I want it to do, and they would be like, okay, yeah, well, we could do that. It could be a servo, it could be slave links there. You can double. No, well, yeah, it's going to wobble. We need to get in 2 pistons there. And I was like, 2 looks good. I could put in 2 pistons there. And so the design developed with the assistance of these engineers.
Oh, so you needed that feedback from...
Yeah, well, I mean, I could have given them a design and said, I want that making.
Yeah,
and
exactly like that.
Exactly like that. But if I can be open to sort of how I can make it work better,
you both. Yeah.
It makes the design look more functional.
Yeah, of course.
And so that was often a compliment to my work, was that it looks like it can be built, or it looks like it can function. Yeah. So that's always usually kind of the thing that I try and do. Like whenever I'm designing stuff or drawing things.
It just underlines the construction.
I can imagine putting it together in the workshop. Yeah. So that's usually how I'm designing stuff.
Even the third part viewer can imagine that this piece can be functional.
Exactly. And it's like if you get a bunch of creatives together, it's amazing what you can come up with. And I come up with this analogy of like, it's like a beach ball or a ball, and you kind of go, okay, I've got this idea and I think it's going to be like this, and I throw the ball to you, and then you go, oh, okay, well maybe it might be quite cool if it does this. I'm like, oh, I like it. And by the time it goes around the team and comes back to you, it's inflated like this.
Yeah.
And I'm running off to my desk being like, I've got to draw before, like, it disappears.
That's the beauty of the networking.
That's one of the things we wanted to ask you. So what's the cooperation between you and the prop like the guys in the workshop? As a gun podcast. So when you sometimes you're creating something from a scratch, sometimes you're building on the real existing guns.
Yes.
Is it somehow different when it's been already existing gun, which is going to be probably used with blanks?
Yeah, I mean, actually the first gun I designed for a movie was on Skyfall. It was scripted that there was an assassin. I think he was scripted. His name was Patrice, the assassin, and this sniper rifle folded out of a suitcase, very James Bond style kind of gadgety thing. This sniper rifle, and he kills somebody from a building across the road, cuts a hole in the glass. So there was this action. You need a glass cutter and a sniper rifle that's going to fold out of a suitcase. And so that's such a great brief, right? And for a Bond movie as well. And I go back to my desk, and it's such an exciting brief. And this was, when was Skyfall? I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago now, maybe 12 years ago.
Maybe even more. Fact checking. Can you check?
Yeah, of course.
But
1 sec.
I'm only kind of dating that by saying I think I was still relatively new to designing that stuff. I was doing a lot of kind of environment design, kind of like illustrating the interiors of sets. But when it was coming down to kind of like that's kind of industrial design, I hadn't done many of them.
Okay.
And I was excited, but I was nervous. And so sometimes when you're like that, you're trying to try too hard. You're trying to over design something. And a lot of my my first attempts at designing this stuff, there was too much going on. I was trying to make it look too cool.
Right.
Trying too hard. And I met with the armorer. He came in and he'd got this rifle bag, much like the one next to you. And he goes, we're thinking I'd like to use this. And he unzipped it. And it was a Accuracy International sniper rifle without the chassis, without the plastic body on it. And it looked very kind of crude, very utilitarian, but wow, really interesting. And it got bolt holes where the case clipped onto it, but just looked like I would have never put those there, but like now that they're there, that's kind of cool. Okay, so we have this, we call it like a donor weapon, so we're going to build it around this. And I was talking to the guys like, how much can we modify? Can I cut the barrel? And they go,
heresy.
No, so the Skyfall is 11 years. I had to connect to the Wi-Fi, but it's 11 years.
11 years, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
2012.
Okay, yeah, 2012, thank you. And okay, no, I can't touch the barrel. Because the thing that they needed was the firing pin, because they were going to put blanks in there. Okay, so we can't touch that, but we can modify like anything. The stock we can do something with. Okay. Yeah. But it was the barrel is obviously it's this beautiful piece of turned steel, right? I'm like, okay, well that doesn't really lend itself to kind of like a rectangular frame of a briefcase because this thing has to fit into a briefcase. And they said, like, well, wait, maybe we could trim the barrel down a bit, but there was kind of a limitation to that. Okay. And I had some funny sessions with my colleagues in the room because we're going to sit there. And okay, so kind of like us three sitting here, kind of like, okay. So he's an assassin, and he's managed to disguise a sniper rifle in a briefcase, and he's got that through airport security. And we're kind of like, could you imagine the security guy just scanning the briefcase, being like, this briefcase feels a bit heavy. What's that? The frame? Oh, I don't know. Hang on.
Is this a bolt?
Is that a bullet? But it's that kind of, okay, we're just kind of suspend for kind of like the magic of the movie, because then you kind of get into too much of a bucket. So we just want something that's going to transform from suitcase into sniper rifle. And so I'd seen a video of someone shooting at a range with a silenced Glock 17, and it had a rectangular The silencer was a rectangular profile.
Yes.
That was the same diameter as the body. So there was this really nice.
I'm not sure if this is a silencer co, but I will double check the manufacturer.
So I thought, oh, okay, so I can have a rectangular silencer, but I want the barrel to be a rectangular. So we had this guy, I forget his surname, but he worked for Baptiste, I think, at the time. He was the armorer.
It's a silencer co Osprey model, by the way, just for the fact checking.
For the fact checking, thank you. But it was important because I could see that existed, and so because in my mind silencers were always cylindrical.
Always, cylindrical.
So I was like, oh, and that was interesting. Was that people go, oh, you don't get rectangular silencers, and I was like, oh, look at this video. Oh wow. So I spoke to I was speaking with the armorer, this guy that worked at Baptiste, who's do kind of weapons for the film industry, and again he's done hundreds of weapons, and so I'm talking with him, and I'm saying like, look, here's this sketch I did, and I said I'd like the barrel to be rectangular, and he's like, because we could probably sleeve it with something, so we could sleeve it with some steel, and then I said, because I want this clip-on silencer, and maybe the silencer could be one of the uprights in the briefcase. Yeah, again, kind of rolling the cigarette. I could do that. Yeah, I think we do that. And I'm like, okay, well, if it's it's a sniper rifle, it needs a scope. Okay, so how can I, bond the gadget the same? Well, maybe the scope could be disguised as the handle.
The handle.
And if it's a nice briefcase, then maybe the handle can have this like nice leather stitching on it and stuff. And maybe it's got a little cap that can pop open, chink, like that. And I'm saying this to the, and he's got a smile on his face like yours, but he's got a cigarette. And so, yeah, I think we could do that. Yeah. And so I don't see this gun again because I get pulled onto something else by then. And I go off and I'm doing a couple of other movies after that, and then Skyfall comes out, and then I see this scene, and he's up in that skyscraper, and he's unpacking this thing, and then there's this big close up on the handle, and it goes chink, and the scope comes out, and I'm like, he did it.
My idea.
Yeah. It looked really nice, but it was just one of those little Bond moments of like, kind of like a concealed gadget, concealed weapon.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was the first. That was the first one, but that was kind of a marriage between, the armorer who was providing the weapon, and then I was building the idea around that.
I believe it's so important having guys like you for the film industry building the guns like this, because once you give this task to someone who is from the industry, we are so rules oriented. So we think about the ballistics. We think about all the features. You need to have like a proper mount, and like there are strict rules you need to follow once you want to achieve like the result.
Yeah.
But you guys can bring art to it.
Yes.
And take out those features which are not important, because there will be more effects.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And that's why it's so important having you guys, and then we can enjoy as well.
Well, I think that there's a sweet spot.
Yes.
Where they meet, because if it's too rules oriented, then it becomes very, very sterile. And then because all that stuff exists in a way. And I was coming up with designs for a stand, and the guy, and I think he'd served in the army, was like, he said, no, normally we would just use a sandbag, a little bean bag for that. I'm like, well, that's not very sexy for the movie. So you got to. There's a little bit of. There's a great base of knowledge and functionality that they bring, and then sometimes we just have to bring in a little bit of design, and both sides need a little bit of nudging. But yes, it is very, very rules orientated. And there's this, and it's very, very strict. Can't cut the barrel and can't do this, and then why can't you cut the barrel? So there's a nice marriage in the center, but equally, like, I mean, we were doing stuff on Doom, where I know that they were building. A lot of the gun designs were done by a friend of mine called Dan Walker. Did these very, very sexy designs for the weapons, and I think they were all Heckler and Koch machine guns, clad in aluminium dressing, to make it look like the guns that he'd designed. And that was my last job as a prop maker. But one of the coolest things about that job was being in the workshop with these guys, and the set decorator had bought in, I think they'd spend about £5,000 on BB guns, and then bought in, loads of turned, and there's a company in London called Bob's Bits, and I actually used to work for Bob at RTM, but he has contacts at a breaker's yard, which is basically where they'll bring vehicles, military bits, Formula One things, and they will break down the vehicles into scrap metals and sell it for weight, for it to be kind of reconstituted. And it's all usually like machined metals, but they can't use them because maybe somebody went the wrong way on the milling machine. It's a defect and they can't use it because it's such high tolerances.
Yeah,
but it's amazing film dressing.
Mistaken parts.
It's amazing film dressing, right? So we had boxes and boxes of all these kind of bits. And we had boxes and boxes, like a warehouse of like old kind of hospital equipment and computers and washing machines. And then we had boxes and boxes of BB guns. And this was the brief. He said, right, there's a weapons room. He said, we've got the main weapons. And this is where the scene where The Rock walks in and finds the BFG, right? The big fucking gun. But to make this look like the weapons room, we need some weapons, right? So it's like, can you design some weapons? We need about 50 to 60, 70 weapons, kind of, from pistols to machine guns that look kind of grounded in reality, but have that bit of a Doom spin on it. Here's the boxes of Lego.
There I go.
Make stuff. And that was the coolest thing. And that was like, playing with adult Lego, and you were sort of breaking down BB guns and kind of reconstituting kind of bits of factory equipment, cladding them together, spraying it all up, putting it on the wall, putting like a little tag on it, and they look great. And it was loads of fun. So yes, we sometimes we've been quite realistic with some of the designs. Some of them we've been quite fantastical. It kind of depends on the genre and the audience, but it's fun to sort of swing between being like, here,
I see,
go crazy, and also like
being
obey the
technical.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, I believe that I will be able to express myself properly, but my question is, how complicated are the tasks from the who's the directors of the movie who will give you the task? Because they need to specify the design of the movie, because every single movie has like a spirit, right? You like a tone and the light, and then you imagine the environment, the whole environment of the movie. Then you can imagine like being there. But this is very complicated because I'm not sure if one designer is able to cover it all, right? But someone needs to express and tell you what's the vibe will be like.
Yes.
Right? And that leads me to the guns. So how complicated is the task from the director? Are they like strict? So it can be real gun oriented, then just add a little bit more, or you can go from the scratch, just build like a sci-fi gun, no rules whatsoever. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so there'll be a chief designer for the movie, and they'll have the title of production designer, and they work with the director to basically translate their vision and the script into the look of the movie, which will cover costumes to sets and architecture and props and things. So they're the one that's kind of helping to steer the overall look and aesthetic of the movie, helping the director to kind of visualize what he wants. And a lot of that tone has been set usually before I come on board. And so by the time I come on board, they've got mood board. They've had those discussions have been had of kind of the tone and the things that they like, and this is the color palette, and this is the kind of aesthetic.
Okay.
And so
is that complicated?
Yeah. So we can sit down and there'll be a brief for whatever it is that we're designing, but it's within these parameters of like, well, it's this period. So like, if you're going back in time, there's no CNC machining, or it would be cast metals and wood, but maybe kind of contemporary, then it's more machined and it's plastic. Yeah. If you're going future tech, then you got to lock down some kind of limit, because you could just be like, kill a laser pen. I don't know. So those parameters are established usually when I come on, but within that, you can usually do your thing, and I prefer that. It's like designing within certain brackets, because otherwise it's just It's just too much out there.
Yeah, you can just get lost in there, like
and
overthinking things.
And it just enables you to really kind of lock down a good design early on, because you're kind of operating within kind of certain materials and a look and a period, and you kind of go. You can kind of put those horse blinkers on. You like do your thing, and you'll come up with a selection of designs within that, and I'll present them to the production designer, and there can be a little bit of, we call it kind of massaging of the design. Sometimes a rejection, and I go back to my desk crying. And
that's what I wanted to ask. That's what I wanted to ask. How often does it happen that you get rejected? That you come up with something you mean it's like super cool, and then you show it to the director. And
usually some of the best designs are the ones that are a bit of a fight. And those ones were quite trying for me early on, because it just makes you start second guessing. Like, oh my God, I can't design this thing. They're going to give it to somebody else at some point, and then it's going to crush me. And then usually, like, I'll have this like kind of eureka moment where I'm like, oh. And it's usually like, it's actually kind of like one of those character arcs in a movie, like when all hope is lost. He just kind of suddenly recognizes something, and I'm like, oh, okay, and that might work. And I might find a random bit of reference, and I'm like, and usually at that point, that's usually when you're at the fuck it, and you're not caring so much, and when you're not caring, you're not trying so hard, and you loosen up because you think you've lost it anyway.
You try to avoid overthinking, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you're just like, okay, well, let me just try this, and that's usually like, they're like, oh, that's better, and you're kind of locking down something and suddenly it feels like you kind of caught a fish. You're like, oh, you're reeling it in. Steady, easy, not too fast. Don't lose it. So you go back to your desk with the thing that you've kind of like, you've hooked something. You're like, okay, well, let me just do a little bit more of this, a bit more of this. Like that? Yeah, that's good. Oh, okay.
But this requires time.
It does. And so there's been a couple of projects where things have been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
But now, like, there's most projects, most features, there's something that is like trying to like crocodile wrestle with a design, and that's usually because maybe the director's thinking of something else, or I'm thinking of something else, but we usually get there in the end. And so that's the thing that I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, so I get the fear less, although it still comes over me every now and then when I'm
There's
like,
experience gain.
I'm going to get fired, but usually it's like it's usually just part of the process.
A little bit of pressure helps sometimes.
And it's quite nice looking back, because then it's kind of boring if you just get a story, you do it, and they go, brilliant, make it. You're like, oh, okay. It's just like
done,
slam dunk. It feels more satisfying if like, oh, you got to wrestle with it. Like ripping the designs off the wall.
Earned.
Telling me that I'm not gonna make it in this industry, and then suddenly you win. So,
or the director can come to you and explain you how the movie is gonna look, and you'll just pull it out of the out of your table. Just you think something like this. Yeah, that's it. Okay, here you go.
Sometimes, because the instructions will filter down from top. So sometimes there can be a little bit of like misinterpretation, a little bit of Chinese whispers. So sometimes I'll be doing something that the designer is correct for the designer, but then we present to the director and he wanted something different. So it's all just a really interesting process now. And so it's kind of like just like strap in and kind of enjoy the ride sometimes.
Speaking of the actual guns, so let's say you already know if it's gonna be like a conventional firing gun, using the cartridges as we know and use these days, or it's gonna be like laser blaster or some kind of another force using machine. I would say, can you influence those, or can you influence the sound for instance? No.
Not
really.
No. I mean, the sound would that would all be taken care of, like the sound department.
Oh, sound department.
Yeah, right. I mean, sound design is a whole department unto itself. I mean, that was always the amazing thing of like. I'm sure as kids, like growing up, right, watching Star Wars, you made ew, like, or my voice is too deep now to make the high pitched blaster noise. I've not done that in years. I just failed miserably. Sorry, guys, but pew, it might be more. But we used to run up, pew, 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 kind of doing this laser noise that you'd hear in Star Wars.
And that's so remarkable. It's so typical.
Well, if you watch any of those kind of sound design documentaries about the Star Wars, I think Brad Burt he won the Oscar for sound design on Star Wars, and the noise of the lasers were high tension cables I think they were tightening power lines. And so like there's a ground anchor, and then there's this very, very high tensile, very tight cable. And he put a microphone on the cable and hit the cable with a hammer. But you would hear the sound travel.
Yes. Yeah.
So it would fade.
Nice.
And then with a little bit of tweaking, you've got this amazing kind of like burst with the travel. So I that's a completely different department, which is just amazing. Those guys are geniuses.
So you'll be surprised on the end of the day once you are in a cinema watching the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, they added this sound. That's so cool.
But most of it, I mean, when we were doing Doom, we had we had to build this because the game was all about, you know, POV going down corridors. So the art department, under the guidance of Stephen Scott, who's the production designer, we had to build this kind of maze of corridors, sci-fi looking corridors, which was fantastic to walk through. And that was at Comodrani, is that Comodrani? Yeah. And so within one of the warehouse spaces, we built the Doom corridors with these metal catwalk grills that had that, you know, uplighters and stuff. Very, very closed space. And they had to do shootouts there. And my prop making workshop was next door to that. And so they were firing blank rounds when they were and then you ding, clink, 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 like so loud.
Oh yeah,
thundering through into our workshop. And you get used to it, but it was funny because I think one of the producers came around and brought one of the US producers came around and had his girlfriend and their friends in, and the workshop smelt of like fiberglass and car body filler. And I remember one of the girls kind of covering her nose because it smelt of resin, and then you know, there's this firing. And looking back on it, it's kind of fun. It's like we're building these props, and in the background, you can hear this like automatic machine gun fire. And I actually went onto the stage because there was brass everywhere, and picked up a few of them and wrote kind of Doom. I think it was 2004 we were doing that. Yeah, 2004, 2005 maybe. Anyway, I wrote the date on it and I put them into they're in my red toolbox.
I'm sorry for breaking the line, but you know what that reminds me?
Nope.
Like having a call on the shooting range. So you are on the shooting range. There was a shooting happening. Like someone is calling you. Someone outside of the
of the industry.
Yeah, of the industry. And then you're like, just pulling your headphone and like, yeah, I can hear you. What's up? It's like, where are you? It's like, I'm working. Sorry. And then like a pause. Like. And then you're like, yeah, he must be super jealous. And you are enjoying the fact that you do what you love, like for a second. And like, yeah, what do you need? How can I help you? And then like, you
should make fun of those people. Like, I'm a counter-terrorist unit.
Sorry for breaking the line, but
No, part of your question, I believe, was that you probably cannot really influence if the gun's going to be shooting the standard cartridge or if it's going to be laser. That's been decided already, of course. Yep. Do you prefer laser or the standard like kind of cartridge firing firearms?
Powder.
For example, one of my super favorite movies from when I grew up was the Starship Troopers. And it was the future. They were traveling in a spaceship and everything, shooting these huge bugs. But they had the like standard kind of style guns because it was Ruger Mini 14 dressed up in the big chassis and everything. But they were shooting the old-fashioned style, and I loved it. That it's not laser or anything like that.
Well, I mean, kind of. I think the thing about lasers in reality is the function of them is actually very, very unimpressive. It's just on, off, no noise. There might be like a hum of power or something. And you could probably get into that. I mean, maybe that there's kind of something a bit kind of spooky about the fact that there is no kind of like dramatic moment, and then you're kind of dealing with like there's something in the silence. So there could be something around that, and there could be something to go into that design in the absence of something that we're so used to, and that's something you could probably lean into very hard and come up with something very, very new. Because we're so used to kind of like, killing an alien with here's this thing. Well, what if it's just and then drop? And you're just like, what? There's where's the drop?
Where's the show?
Yeah, but you could kind of lean into the kind of that there's something there in its absence. So it kind of opens up a kind of like the possibility to design something like that, and perhaps even kind of design the movie where there isn't like kind of no drama, like just dropped.
Yeah, that reminds me car industry when they put like extra sounds to the electric vehicles.
I had a friend of mine. This is on Mission Impossible, and he'd hired a Tesla for the weekend, and he was giving me the cell. Man, he loved this thing. He was giving me the cell and drove around it and stuff. And, he'd hired it for this holiday, this weekend away with his girlfriend, and he came back and he said, he goes, I found a fault with the Tesla. I said, what? And he said, old people in car parks. And he said, like, if I'm reversing out and I'm leaving the car park, the car's a ninja because they don't know it's behind you. And like being a Brit, we can't beat the horn. So he said, my girlfriend was having to wind down the windows and going, excuse me, because how do you walk? And they turn around and go, oh, there's a car there.
They should put a beeping sound, which is with trucks, when they go on the reverse, that beep,
beep, beep, beep, beep, beep, just when it moves. But this was just driving forward, like, just like, how do we, like, don't know the cars there? Yeah. Pardon me, like, very, very British. But you asked, what do I prefer? So I'm kind of, my young self loved, it was all about the laser blasters, but those laser made a big noise, and there was the lights that came out, those the laser beams, and I still love laser beams. I think they're really, really
also like collecting power before the actual shot.
Oh yeah.
Green, red, kind of disco light show. What they did on the Star Wars movies, my friend was designing a lot of the blasters, and they were being dressed over airsoft, because the whole kind of design law of the weapons within Star Wars was that they were built over all these old kind of World War
Sterlings
II.
and C96 was the Han Solo's pistol.
Exactly. So they took that approach, and so they got in these old guns and then dressed them up, and it was my friend Matt's job to basically design over the top of these guns, and they had them as they were either electric or gas blowbacks, which meant, because if it's a laser or if it's just a prop, it doesn't move. But if it was a blowback BB gun, you pull the trigger and there's an action, so it would jerk.
Something happens.
Click, 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 click. And I think they'd even put a little diode in the end, so there was a light at the end.
Yeah, maybe.
But the main thing was, as an actor, when you pulled the trigger, the gun moved.
The action.
It did something. So the actor, you wouldn't be walking along tempting to make pew noises with your mouth.
Right.
You could engage with this function of shooting, and I thought that was quite cool. So.
And people appreciate it when there are the details on the gun moving, when it's doing something. Especially, you totally remind me that sound of charging, a Demolition Man.
This is not
when Wesley Snipes goes into the museum to get the guns, and then he got the most high-tech stuff.
Yeah.
And where are the batteries? I need batteries for this.
My favorite charging noise was when they turned the proton packs on in Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters movie. And there's the really, really funny scene in the original Ghostbusters where they're stood there in the elevator, and I think it's Egon turns around and goes, "Switch me on," and the sound design goes
like a 5 seconds,
and they start backing away from him.
Oh yeah, this is.
But I love that again. It's that bamboo, and I mean, it's just a plastic prop. I mean, on the set, it would just nothing would have happened. So there's this real nice bit of magic that comes with, like, we do our part in the art department, design, and kind of the directors and the actors, and then sound and editing, and then it all kind of comes together as this amazing cocktail. And you watch it on the screen, and sometimes you go, "Oh, it's a pile of crap." And sometimes you watch it and you go like, "Wow, that was fucking cool."
Yeah.
And you don't know what it's going to be like. You really don't, because everybody's doing their job with like 100%. All the departments are bringing the A game when we're doing it. And so you really don't know until you see it, because there's been plenty of projects where the script's been good, or maybe the script's not been good, but you think, oh, it'll be fun or whatever, But
on the end of the day, majority of them are kind of successful, because we all enjoy it, right? Because but it's so interesting.
Maybe you don't talk about the unsuccessful ones, just.
Yeah,
but don't remember them.
We are from an industry, we judge. And we judge hard. Man. We judge hard.
We stop. There's a gun for a split of a second, and just no, reverse, go, rewind, and then pause it, and then you explain your girlfriend everything about it. She fucking hates it.
I was listening to an episode of Rogan, and they had on, was it maybe some guy he was either special service or like worked for a gun company, but he was talking about similar kind of thing, how he watches movies and he's like, man, I see things in movies and they just drive me nuts. He goes, oh, like what? And they were talking about Sicario. And he goes, there's a scene in Sicario where they're crossing the border and one of the actors, like, the bolt is back or the bolt is forward when it's in the wrong position in the car, and it's like no one else would notice, but like, to the industry it's like, what, like, it's a huge red flag, like, no, and he goes, I see stuff like that, and it drives me nuts.
Last month we watched the Band of Brothers with my wife, and exact thing. The guy was aiming with his M1 Garand, bolt in the back position. I was like, no, cannot do that. Don't do that. Split of a second.
Yeah. But, it caught us totally once we were like teenagers back in the day. Not that skilled, probably. And we loved the vibe of it. Everything, the scenery, the tragedies and everything.
This is on Band of Brothers, or
yes. But nowadays, as we know it, and we just want to remind that feelings we had watching it for the first time, then you just look at it from a different perspective.
Well, there's no emotional when you're watching it you're watching it as kind of like entertainment, as when you're viewing it like that. And I think kind of like the emotional reality to a lot of that stuff comes after the fact, which gives it its weight. Into the story.
Once as you grow up and you emotionally change, you see things differently. So that also makes we had a discussion the other day that we enjoy things different. Nowadays, as we kind of grow somehow.
I mean, growing up as a kid in the 90s, we had 4 channels on the television in the UK. And I wish it stayed like that in a way, because I mean, I was always envious of like my parents or friends that visited the US. Oh, wow, you got hundreds of channels. Wow. And my dad would say, but there's nothing on them. Spend most of the time going click, 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 click. Yeah. Whereas like you might complain about being limited to 4, but the amazing thing is that you could go into school the next day and went, oh my God, who saw RoboCop last night? Half the class saw it. So there was this communal viewing, and you'd all be talking about it in the playground the next day. And we used to get the newspaper, and I would immediately go to the TV guide, go to Friday, because they always put movies on a Friday and Saturday, and the movies were outlined in black, so I could see, what's the movies? And I'd watch some action, especially if it was, oh my God, there's some horror, there's a scary movie on. Watch that. Now, like, I remember when Paranormal Activity came out, it's like, oh man, I can't do this. I was really into roller coaster rides as a kid, and now I'm like, man, I could do without the anxiety. What you go on? I say to myself, you can go on it. I'll sit here and watch. You can tell me what Paranormal Activity was like. I don't enjoy kind of the safe scare, because also like my imagination is so vivid, that stuff stays with me for such a long time.
Oh yeah.
I saw Blair Witch Project.
Oh, that was a huge thing also when I was
oh my God. And I was at university, and the university was next to a woods. And so like I had to walk for like 20 minutes next to these woods. Oh, and the stuff my imagination was doing. So it's just like, I prefer, if I go to bed at night, I'm quite happy if I'm going to bed quite content and I'm not worried or stressed about something. The last thing I want to imagine is like some kind of demonic figure standing over the bottom of my bed, because my brain will go there for me. It's like, as a kind of designer, it will trigger that in my brain. It'll be like, hey, there's what's a cool sci-fi gun, and my brain will go and it will come up with this thing. And it will also do it with like, what's a really scary moment if you're walking down a dark corridor, and my brain will go to dark places. That will bring up, as you can see now, goosebumps on my hand. So it's just like I have these my brain will go to places that I think is very intense and very emotive and very visual, and I would get in trouble in school for that a lot, because I wasn't paying attention. And,
I see.
I would
daydreaming.
daydreaming, which was punished. And I understood why, because then I couldn't do the work. But it was just like the marks in my books would often be like absent-minded, head in the clouds.
Right.
Yeah.
And both of them were kind of true, although absent-minded was a bit unfair, I would say. There was too much going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I can go off and just like, the space opera of visuals going on in my head was just like very distracting. And
Man, don't do drugs. It's going to get even worse.
quite tempted to try LSD or something like that.
That has been discussed.
Just to see those.
Rogan talked about it a lot, about the
if we could just plug your brain onto the screen or something, then do it, and we will watch it, because they would be amazing.
Oh my God,
I can imagine.
The thing is that usually parents are considering it as a bad. So mind in the clouds, something like that, and the parents are worried about you. But the question is, aren't you just totally creative person?
Yeah, very much.
You just need to be pointed to the right direction then.
Very much so, and like I've had a therapist now for like the past sort of 5, maybe 6 years, and it's very interesting. We reflect a lot on kind of like my upbringing and schooling, and I had a very happy childhood. There's no complaints there as such, but just kind of reflecting upon how that kind of creativity in school, in art class, it was nurtured, and wow, look this is what Christopher is doing. But like I had dyslexia, which wasn't recognized until I got to art college. It was, you're not trying hard enough, you're not paying attention, Chris isn't there, he's not good at English, he's not good at maths. And so I just used to get my ass kicked academically, very unsympathetically. You're not trying hard enough. And I just didn't know what was going on. And like one of the classic things is, and this is something that's a childhood trauma that I go over, is that a classic dyslexia sign is that I will write the word twice and not read it twice. So I'd write the,
Interesting.
I went to the shops, but when I read it back, my brain will skip out the double the.
The double.
And God, I remember sitting there with my dad. We were reading through my homework, and he was getting really mad because he could see it, I couldn't.
Yeah.
And there's this thing of like, what? And again, when he eventually pointed it to me, I'm like, oh, it's like someone pulled.
Pull it from.
So it's this thing of like, I don't quite know what's going on with my own head sometimes, and I don't get it, and it makes me because I'm like, shit, I will let me down like this, and I didn't understand how I was operating, and kind of a bit sort of traumatic at times, very confusing at times, and I think. Like when I go on, and I've spoken to some art colleges and stuff, and the thing that it tends to resonate with them, this thing of like being a dreamer and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, you're probably not going to be mathematicians and scientists. But the funny thing is, we don't punish let's say you put the mathematicians and scientists into art class. We don't punish them for not being able to draw.
Right? For example.
But exactly. I can get my ass kicked by my maths teacher because I don't get what he's trying to put on the graph, and so it just seemed kind of very unfair. And so like I try to, it's almost sort of a bit of a healing for my past self. But when I'm talking to students and things, I'm being like, look, you guys can do things that other people can't, and vice versa. And I'm like, you all deserve to be kind of embraced for this. It's like, what are you into? What are you into? Let's just like, some of you are I get asked this question, and it's sometimes by usually kind of admin staff within the art department. And they'll say like, man, Chris, how can you look at a screen all day? And I'm like, that's not a screen, that's a visual. And I'm like, that's me. That's me on the floor with pens and papers, and I'm drawing. You'll have to pull me away from that thing. I lose time.
Yeah.
This is so strange. Yeah. Comparison, like the programs, the studying we've been through, and all the grades they pushed us to perform, and everyone was so obsessed with the grades. Afterwards, once I ended up my studying period of time, no one really asked me about my grades anymore. No, not a single employer was asking me about my grade. What was your grade from the Czech language? No one really asked, and no one will. I'm sure about it.
But if you make a major mistake in an email, everybody will think you're an idiot.
But that's the actual execution. But no one is asking about the grades, right? And also we all have like specialties, and that's the beauty of the mankind, I would say.
Totally. And I think it's those things of like, if you have a specialty that's outside of those, let's say the academic, that kind of within that kind of narrow academic window, you really kind of like look down upon. You're just like, well, you're not trying hard enough. And so we when by the time I got to art college, the local education board put a specialist in to test us for dyslexia. Everyone flagged up, and that was a free test, but if we wanted an official certification, we had to pay, it was like £70, which is about 80 euros, and to have this test, and then we'd get it certified, and then we would have access. I think they'd give us, like, we had a free Macintosh, we could have a dictaphone, because the thing is, it's like retaining words, numbers, so for kind of written tests and things like, we needed more time. I was 18, and I remember being like, do I want to pay £70 to get this thing? And I was like, man, you guys are like 10 years too late.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you guys. Where were you when I was getting shouted at by the teacher? I was just forever getting told off at just being Chris is a terrible speller. Chris is a terrible speller. Not like something is going on here, like he's interpreting spelling in a wrong way, like what's going on, we should get him some help. It's like, Chris is a terrible speller, and that's it. I mean, I wasn't a crap student. It was just that there were these anomalies that should have been flagged up by teachers and weren't. So I was just like, fuck you guys. I've come this far. I don't need your help now.
But man, overall, if you look at you and your career, you realized what you're good at, and you pursued it into your career, and now you're doing your job which you love. So
this is important in life.
Important. Two most important things from what I've heard right now was that you figure out what you want to do, and you were not afraid to take the steps to do that. Quit the job you do to build on your portfolio and ask the productions like, hey, can I present you my drawings? I know that it's actually similar to one of my stories from the past, because I moved to New Zealand and I was searching for a job, and one of the jobs I really wanted was to work in a gun shop selling guns. I always loved guns, so even though they didn't have, they were not searching for anyone, I showed up in the gun shop and they had a file on their websites where you can apply for a job. So, but they were not even looking for anybody. I just filled the file, put it on the table, and said like, I know you're not searching for anybody, but I love guns. I would love to work here and everything. I gave it to the boss of that shop, and he was like, "Nah, we have enough people, but thank you." And I went back home, and in a week or two, they gave me a call because two guys just quit in those 2 weeks. So they were two guys short immediately, and they had this file on the table. So we're like, let this guy
solution is right in front of us.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna make it easier. So
I think that stuff is so important, and
it is.
And you can either figure it out by yourself, or you can have like a mentor kind of give you some advice like that. I mean, when I was doing work experience within the film industry, and I was at this company Artem, I was 21. And these freelancers were just about hitting their 30s, and some of them had been at the college that I was at, and they were like, "Oh yeah, so and so still there, whatever." And they were like, I remember one guy. Some of them would be kind of like playfully mean, kind of hazing, kind of making fun. Oh, the work experience is student. Oh, you're a student, whatever. And some of them would be quite nice and be like saying like, "What are you going to do when you graduate?" And I was like, "I don't know, go try and look for a job." And they said, "When you graduate, go and chase those jobs." He said most people will go and take 6 months out, go traveling, and then they come back and all the jobs are gone. He said as soon as you're out, go in. And that's what I did, and I got that job immediately. And I remember for the next month or so seeing all these student applications, seeing them coming to visit with their portfolio, but I'd just gone in there first. And so I never liked sounding like some old wise sage being like, you should do this. But sometimes it makes the difference between not getting the job or getting the job. Is just like, look, you really need to just put yourself in those positions where You know, like
you just need to be there. You need to be present. You need to show yourself to people. They're not going to discover you when you're in your basement, you know, and like, oh, I'm so good at this, and I wish they like could give me a call. That's never going to happen. You need to pick up the phone or go there.
I remember
no one's saving you.
No, it's not a romantic comedy, man.
but that reminds me, hearing your story, like feeling lost in the age of 12, right? Like visiting your father in the garden, like almost crying, like I'm lost, I don't know what to do. But then you figure it out very soon, and you formed your ideas and formed yourself and pointed the very strict direction where you want to be stationed in the future, and that's very important. Sometimes I feel like it's too early in the age of 13, 14, 15 years when they are asking us, what do you want to do? I was lost as well. I was lost. You know, well, I don't know. Do you want to be like IT guys? I kind of enjoy computers, but not really. Do you want to be like a mechanic? I was like, I kind of like it, but they did a test on me specifically, and they showed up with the fact that I should be working in the storage of the books. How was it called?
Library.
Storage of the books.
I got a.
Sorry, I just lost.
I got a better one because they brought in when we were 14. Like they wheeled in kind of like the high school had spent a fortune on. Like we'd got computer labs, but there was this some super computer. I can't remember what it was. You know, some flashy name or whatever. And like there's this file on here, and it's in this room, and they brought it out, and it was on this table with wheels, and it's got this. It was for the careers department, and they had in here basically all careers available to you, and it was this sort of like elimination test. Do you want to work inside or outside, flexible hours or not? So we sat down and we're like, okay, and I sat down with my friends and right, okay, so sit down. Okay, so possible jobs. Would you like to work inside or outside? And we were 14, 15, outside. Outside. Would you like flexible hours or permanent hours? Flexible hours. And a few more of those. And it basically whittled down to, and then the beach ball, the things processing. And it came up with car park attendant. Outdoors, flexible hours. And
awesome.
It's a perfect match.
Exactly.
I probably went home that evening. I was like, I don't want to be a car park attendant.
That's how dating apps works. Exactly.
Oh yeah. Yes. But afterwards you realized what's your passion really like.
I've been very, very lucky. I've been very, very lucky. And my son's 14, and we're going through a similar kind of thing. And the only thing that I've had to be really, really careful because there's certainly things that I would like him to do, which is basically if I had another me, I'd like to try this.
Yes.
So, I'm trying my best not to do that, and all I'm trying to get him to understand is like chase the thing that you want to do. Yeah. And at the moment it seems to be kind of video editing, and he's mad into cars. We tried drawing and stuff, but it's just I was always drawing in my private time, like always sketching. He wasn't, but he's mad into cars, and so it's just kind of okay. Well, let's just kind of put the spotlight on over there and just broadly follow what you enjoy. But I think to monetize your creativity is very difficult.
Oh, of course.
Well, guys, if I can interrupt, let's get back to the
yes. That was my. But it was great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was.
I got my second gun.
So you worked on a lot of other movies. We mentioned just Doom and Grimm Brothers.
James Bond as well.
James Bond, Mission Impossible. Star Wars, Dune.
Yeah.
Which one do you enjoy the most?
Dune was definitely the. There were some amazing moments on Star Wars because we built the full-size Millennium Falcon.
Ooh, full size.
For 7, they built, as I understood it, they built half of it for exterior shooting, and then for 8, I believe, and I think this is how the story goes, was that they wanted to build more of the interior, but to build more of the interior, they would need to build an extension to support the interior space. And I think one of the producers or someone said, why don't we just build the whole thing? So in the art department we were in one of the stages 2 floors up, and we would go down and see them building the full Millennium Falcon, and that was quite a thing of like being able to go around the spaceship. But careful, you're gonna get spaceship stories. Stay on the guns thing. Stay on the guns thing. Otherwise,
so if we get back to the guns, would you consider yourself to be like a gun specialist in design terms?
No, not really. I mean, it's I'll do my thing, whatever you throw at me.
Yeah.
Guns I enjoy, but it's almost a bit like it's kind of like the pornography of designing. It's very like very kind of like an easy thing to like seduce people with, and gun.
Yeah.
Everybody likes them.
Yeah.
In fact, we were told, one of my tutors in model making, we could make anything we wanted, and for our final major project, and he had this thing. He said, "Do not build guns, or do not build sci-fi." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "It was just students having a wank, basically, which is just basically it's just, doing the thing you wanted. It's just too easy. It's just too easy." And it's the thing that I tell students is like, try to not put that in your portfolio. If too much sci-fi or too many weapons, it just pigeonholes you too much. So you want to come across as a designer that can do your design thing, whatever it is. It's like, you could be designing lightsabers, or it could be a hand flare. So guns are great to design, and it's a signature thing. And
so you're shadow banned even as an artist. you just no guns, no sci-fi.
Yeah. Well, just have a portfolio that covers everything as a designer.
Right.
And so, the second gun I designed was for a movie called Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm. That's the one we have on the table.
We conveniently have on the table here for the viewers. Excuse me. I got called onto this movie, and embarrassingly, really, I hadn't heard of Guardians of the Galaxy. I was into comics as a teen, but I hadn't heard of Guardians of the Galaxy. I think I'd seen the cover, but I didn't know the lore, didn't really know what it was about, but got pulled in as part of the art department. And this set decorator who I'd worked for on Doom, I worked for him many times. Right, okay, here's a list of stuff we need to go. Okay, first thing, all right, quills, pistols, that's a good thing to tick off the list. And there's an interesting story behind this one, if you want to.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
It was the first thing I designed, and when I came onto the art department, there was all the art up on the walls, and I could see that there was this kind of funky sort of 70s kind of retro sci-fi look to a lot of this work.
Because he's listening to the old music from the cassette and stuff.
And so I'm like, okay, well, so maybe it needs to be kind of. And we were talking with the set decorator, and he was like, yeah, kind of like think of like 70, like look at some 70s ray guns, some blasters, but kind of cool, and like, okay, so. It's always interesting, the first designs that you come up with, because they're guaranteed to be wrong, but you need to get them out of the way. And I was doing these ones, and I kind of, after a couple of days, I had this selection of stuff, which was kind of, they were guns, and the designer was really pushing for something interesting. Like, don't put a trigger on it. Don't put a trigger there. It's too obvious. So try to do something that's very, do something different. Do something different. And so, looking at a lot of different guns, and he comes and sits down at my desk, and he's like, right, okay, what have you done here? And I kind of show him this stuff, and he goes, right, okay, it's not bad. He goes, He said, right, you've read the script. I'm like, oh, yeah. And he goes, right, so, the opening scene where he's walking across the planet. I'm like, yeah. And he said it's he's listening to the song Redbone, Come Get Your Love. I was like, he said, you know that song? And I said, no. Yeah, put it into YouTube. Oh, okay. Put it into YouTube. And that 70s guitar sound comes in. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
And suddenly, I'm like, oh, it's fun. Like, it's like, oh, 70s and beach buggies and, California. And like, And the designer's like, yeah, he's kind of like, he's sort of, he wants to be cool like Clint Eastwood, but he's a bit more like Harrison Ford. Like, he's goofy at times. He's a bit vulnerable, but... He's going around the galaxy, he's collecting stuff, and he can fix things. He's kind of, but he's kind of, he wants to be more than he is, but he's very human. He's clumsy and he's foolish and stuff. Oh, wow, okay. And so the song's playing. And like when I'm listening to this stuff, and I can see Redbone on stage performing, and they've got this 70s costumes, and suddenly all these visions of, you know, dune buggies and 70s muscle cars, and then I'm like, oh, muscle cars, oh, exposed engines. I was like, maybe the gun can have like, maybe he's bought a gun, maybe he's taken the engine out, maybe he's put a bigger one in, a bit like a hot rod. So maybe the cowling is off the gun, and there's a custom engine in there. So maybe we can see the engine of this gun. Okay, and colors as well. Oh, hot rod stripes. Okay, so suddenly the next pass of these guns, I'd taken the cowling off and I'd put in these exposed engines, which then look kind of cool. And I'm saying engine as in kind of functioning part of the gun. Yeah. And so suddenly it's starting to get this character. So, he's put this in there. It's kind of like hot rods. And I'm able to show this to the designer. The designer's like, yeah, I like this. And some of it's got like, these stripes on it. And then the production designer used to be, his name's Charlie Woods, and I'm actually working for him at the moment. He used to do furniture restoration. So he was all about surface detail and texture and patina. And having been a special effects technician, I know what it's like to weld metal, and I know what happened if you look at the end of like a MIG weld or anything. You get heat discoloration, or bluing. Yeah. So I was then taking photographs of bluing in the special effects workshop, and then putting that in Photoshop on the barrel of the gun. So it's kind of a bit of spatter and stuff. So it looked used, right? It wasn't. It looks like this thing gets hot, because you'll see it on motorbike exhaust. You see it on the end of exhaust.
Exactly.
This thing's being used. Like it doesn't even have to be on or shooting, but it looks like it gets hot and used. And so this thing is, it's developing, and we did. I'm thinking of like, okay, so what are some different designs for guns? Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. Got a wet nose like a puppy. I remember this cartoon from my childhood, and it's called Brave Star, and it was this sci-fi sheriff, cowboy sheriff, but sci-fi, and he had a cyborg horse. And the thing that I remember about the gun was that it was this traditional pistol shape, but the barrel seemed to be repeated on the underside. And I remember that as a kid, and my friends and I used to build this kind of U-shaped gun in Lego. So what I did in Photoshop was then copy the barrel and put it on underneath.
Yes.
And then so suddenly the designer's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And we started developing that, but that design was all triggered from a song, which was really interesting, just a 70s song. So I got these memories of like, there's these Hot Wheels muscle cars that I used to collect, these models, and exposed engines, and kind of my history as a prop maker and effects technician came into play and produced this design. So it was approved, built, and that was a cool thing to also go into the workshop and see them building it and designing it. And the thing moves. The barrel comes out when you pull the trigger, and the piece on the underside, it was scripted that he could shoot people and not kill them, so there needed to be almost like a stun,
paralyzed.
Yeah, so I came up with this design for like a taser, but it was taser prongs that rotated like a Gatling gun, because I love the movie Predator.
Of course. Oh yeah.
Right. So I'll show you afterwards. I've actually got some clips in the workshop of me going, yeah, do that again, and it's the gun with the cowling off and all the mechanisms, and the barrel shooting forward, and this twin taser spinning with a blue light inside.
Nice.
Which looks so cool. But in the movie, they put lens flow over the top of it, so you can't see it moving, but it does animate when you pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But that was a really interesting arc and way of designing something. So music was very, very influential for that design.
So now, Lucas, you got the answer to the question you haven't asked, but we have it in a book. And that's the inspiration. So we now see the whole process of you thinking about the particular gun or particular part of design. It's a very, very well thought through, and you can get inspired by everything, basically, right?
It's like I said, it's been a daydreamer, man. It's just like you show me something, and my brain will just starts coming up with ideas.
How much time does it take in average? Because sometimes when I try to think something through, I cannot find the answer right what I want, but I wake up in the middle of the night. bang, and it's there.
Yes.
And I need to write something down, or it's like, yeah, there's a solution. It was that simple. It was all there, but it required like 2 more nights.
Yes.
There.
Well, I listened to a really interesting podcast, and it was about design, but they were focusing on the company 3M, who make like things like Post-it notes.
Yeah.
And they were saying something like there's a patent to employee ratio of at least 1 to 1 or maybe 3 to 1, and they've learnt that most of their patents don't come from brainstorming or sitting around the table. That they'll come from when the person's driving home, or they're in the shower, or they're going for a walk.
Yes.
So, as I remember, apparently the company 3M actively encourage or insist that an hour a day, in addition to their lunch or whatever, if you want to go and sleep, if you want to go for a walk, play table tennis, do whatever you want, just don't work. Let your brain go off and marinate with this stuff, because it's in those moments where you go, oh,
It's there.
I've got it. I've got it. I did a TED talk recently, actually, and it was a similar kind of thing of like that thing of daydreaming, and I likened it to like seeing and trying to catch fireflies, Svetlushki, like when you see them in a field, and like if someone feeds me something like, oh, what would be scary at the end of the corridor, or what's a good gun, or like, hey, what could we do with this? It gets my imagination going. It's suddenly like there's the fireflies, right? There's a lot of them, and you got to go in there and you got to be like, and try and catch it. And maybe have you caught it? Maybe no, but it'll get away. But and in those moments, that's usually like me at home, like, quick, give me a pen, and I'll go running off into my studio and try to like catch that idea, because it's less about kind of my skill as an illustrator, although I have to be able to sell a design, I need to be able to draw, but it's more about like the idea. That's that lightning in a bottle. That's what separates me from other designers. It's like we can all draw and design and stuff, but it's just like, man, where'd you get that idea from? It's just like,
I don't know.
So Svetlushki in a field somewhere, and I managed to catch it. But what I caught, it's like, if I can use the example of this Guardians of the Galaxy gun, is that design is based on cars that I used to play with as a child. My experience as a workshop technician, building stuff and welding, and my memories of building this Lego pistol based on a cartoon that I used to watch. So it's that's kind of what makes me as a designer. It's less about my skills to draw it, and it's more about where does my mind go when I'm being given a brief.
What is really priceless about this is that you really give your the things you are,
personal experience.
All the personal experience you gained through all of these years into the product. Well, that's you.
Yes, and funnily enough, that was the thing that was discouraged in school. Stop doing that. Pay attention. So I was quite lucky to keep nurturing that.
Yeah.
If I wanna talk a bit more about the Guardians of Galaxy gun, it's been a comics before, right? It's based on a comic. So did you get any limitations from the comics origin? Because I assume he probably had some sort of gun.
He had a design that existed in the comics, and we were very lucky that I think that they wanted to try. Let's try and do a new pistol,
right?
A new pistol.
Because Guardians of Galaxy were probably not so much popular comics, so they wouldn't get that like big backlash of the fans, original fans, like, oh, this is not right. It's supposed to look like this.
Yeah, I think there was initially like a little bit of that's not what his gun looks like, because I remember when the posters came out and just being curious, which is like, how's that being received? Yeah. And then there were some comments that like, it's the Halo pistol. I've never played Halo, and I had to Google it. And there's some like an energy thing. I think it's one of the alien weapons that is sort of like a kind of like a.
Could be. I'm not.
I didn't play it, but I'm like, oh, okay. Here. But everything is a derivative of something that you've seen. But it was just, it's like right idea but wrong entertainment source. It was actually from the cartoon. But when I started on the movie, it was funny because my boss was explaining it to me, and he said, yeah, no, it's this guy, and he's kind of cool, and he's got this band of people with him, and they're this sort of ragtag group of, kind of sort of anti-heroes. There's this kind of genetically modified raccoon who can talk. He's kind of an engineer. A raccoon. Yeah, he's a raccoon. And he can talk. Yeah. Okay, and then the raccoon's got a sidekick, and he's a tree. But the tree can't talk, but he can walk. But he's like there's a walking tree, a talking raccoon, and he's like, yeah. And I'm thinking, like, this movie is either going to be, it's so bonkers and so crazy. It's either going to be really good or really terrible. And when I remember, because I was on Spectre, and the reviews for Guardians were coming out, and I'd forgotten about it. Mm-hmm. And I was hearing like, man, I saw Guardians at the weekend. Man, I haven't felt like that since Star Wars. It's just fun. It's just fun. And so I went to the cinema to go and watch it, and I'm laughing because also there's a little bit of adult humor, and the guy's kind of goofy but a hero at the same time, with a good heart, and he's trying and failing, but he's also it was so great, and the stuff looked fantastic, and you got to see the pistol there as well, and it got turned into a Nerf gun, which was really cool. And then what's been interesting is seeing it being kind of converted back into the prop for cosplays. So they'd buy the Nerf and then spray it all up again and turn
cool.
it back
to make it look like in a movie.
Yeah.
Now you reminded me that there's the raccoon guy is actually the gun guy. He's got like a lot of guns in there. How come you didn't design those?
Well, we had I think it was Frame Store, who was one of the visual effects companies and who were working on the movie, and they had a bunch of concept artists and teams of guys doing stuff, and other weapons were being designed by other concept artists. But I was just very lucky they're like, okay, here's the main character. We need to get this, and again, I was going into the workshop and kind of talking with the guys about stuff.
And another question would be like, we, for example, here see some daggers, but this is like the Nerf gun you buy in a shop. How come you don't have like one of the 3D prints or one of the prototypes
if I could go back, that's the funny thing, is like when you're on the movie, it's just like that's one of maybe 50 things I had to design, and so once that's done, I'm on to the next one, and I'll go down to the workshop. Oh, that's looking cool, and before I know it, I'm off the movie or they're shooting with it. I think I went down and I saw one of the finished ones, but it was just when I was passing through because I was designing I was already designing something else. But I probably should have asked if I could have had one of the like the resin cast ones or something. But the other things on the table here, this is a dagger designed by a friend of mine who was also working on Brothers Grimm. This is designed by Kurt, but I had to do it was built by the props department, and then I had to make a kind of like a safe plastic version for them to fight with. And so I did, because I could mold things by then, because I was doing everything in that visual effects place. I took a fiberglass mold of it and I cast it in 50/50 fast cast resin and then painted it up. And it was for a fight scene with Heath Ledger and I think one of the other guys. And I did an extra one for myself. And word came back that Heath Ledger wanted a copy, and so I told him that if he could sign mine, he could have one. So I made an extra one for him, and so this is signed by Heath Ledger.
Oh my God!
So it says, reach over here. It says, "To Chris, thank you kindly for the knife, Heath Ledger." Of course, like, tragically, he died on Batman, but
that's cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then this one here is one of the ceremonial daggers for the movie The Omen. Or Satan Pshikazi.
Satan Pshikazi.
Oh, I see.
I was reading what's written on it. It's partially written in Kyrillic.
There's supposed to be like some Arabic on there as well.
Yeah,
Arabic. I think it was like it was scripted that there were 7 ceremonial daggers that had to be inserted into several points into the child to kill the demon. And so in the original movie, they were quite sort of crude daggers with just a wooden handle, so we wanted to just sort of maybe kind of develop do a new take on it. So we came up with I was looking at I bought this book of old antique daggers and swords, and some of them had these like little rings at the end, kind of like finger hole. And I thought, it might be quite cool if I could just develop up kind of the grip a bit more.
It looks like a claws of the raven or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And there's one of the fantastic things about working in the Czech Republic is that there's the traditional crafts here are so strong. Like we had an amazing blacksmith who made this.
So this one is forged.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
And I had to pay him for an extra one to have for myself because I thought they were so nice. I was like, oh my god, like I've got to have one as well. So yeah,
that's cool.
I wanted to ask one thing that popped up in my mind is I'm watching a lot of anime movies also, and they are crazy about robots and about this kind of technique. Have you ever done a design for anime movie?
No. I mean, I had some friends who were working on Ghost in the Shell. But I didn't get onto that. But I love all that Japanese robotic stuff. I mean, one of my favorite sources of inspiration is the Bjork music video shot by a British director called Chris Cunningham, and it's the song All Is Full of Love, and it's basically Bjork's face is on this white robot, and these two machine arms come in, and it's basically they start kind of sort of oiling and kind of adjusting her, and she's singing. Amazing video, and just the technology. It's all like black anodized metal with white shiny fiberglass coverings with little red kind of Japanese logos on them, just all stuff, and it's got this little welding and things on it, and that's kind of like heaven to me. I love that stuff. So. Robotic arms, machining, pistons. So kind of like put me in a workshop like this one here, and I'm just kind of,
Man, it's crazy. One of the movies I found with amazing guns in it. If you haven't seen it, I totally recommend you. It's Guns O.
Okay.
It's a Japanese anime movie fighting monsters, and they have ridiculously amazing guns over there, like really amazing. They do stuff I never even could imagine.
You forced me to look at that.
I he wasn't so excited about it, but you haven't seen the whole movie. So I definitely recommend that. But anime guns are a big thing.
The guns in Ghost in the Shell, the concepts of them are absolutely fantastic. Like there's that scene where the bodyguards have got the machine guns that drop out of the briefcases. And they open up and they're shooting them, and again, kind of the realism. It's like it's contemporary, but just with a slight kind of futuristic, just little tickle on it.
Isn't it the one that Brigger and Tomet are making? they actually do have a briefcase that falls out into the gun, and it really works.
There's I saw some, because I've got an old book on guns, and like in the 80s, like the bodyguards for the presidents, there was like what's the short Heckler and Koch one, and they've got it. That's
MP5K.
Oh, MP5 in a case. Yes.
In a case, and they've got that to go. But the designs for the Ghost in the Shell scene, where like it's more gun and less case. So it's literally like the president's bodyguards have just got the gun in a case, whereas the Ghost in the Shell
I
guns
need to look it up.
They're just like they're just so beautiful. Yeah, so it's it's the scene in the anime where it's kind of near the beginning, and I think it's the major jumps off the building, and she goes down, and then it cuts to some sort of like shady business deal, and I think she assassinates one of them through the glass, and then the bodyguards just like drop they click something, and the case just drops off, and there's this like sexy machine gun there. and then the idea that there's a guy that they were chasing through the streets, and he's got this like little machine pistol, I think it was, or machine gun, and they said that he's putting high power rounds into this little thing, and there's this great detail that he's getting ready to shoot at this police car coming, and he takes the gun out, and then the camera closes in on his feet, taking a wider stance and really gripping himself into the ground, because when he fires this pistol, it pushes him back across.
And there's a water, and it makes the effect when as
and
it
I just thought it was
back.
such a lovely little touch. Like, he's not even fired this thing, and it's going to kick.
So fact checking, it was a briefcase mini Uzi. So it wasn't the Brigadier Tomet, it was mini Uzi.
Oh, okay.
Used to disguise as a briefcase.
Yeah, but there are some projects not done by different companies, not only BNT, but but also different like Magpul and also the different companies. Yeah, but it's cool. They have that foldable variant. They just click the button and then you have like a pistol with the stock. Like
well, it's like but is it called like carbine conversions? Like I've seen those for Glocks where it literally like it looks like a thing and just kind of
but
open the whole
foldable.
thing.
Same story but foldable.
It almost looks like it's a big computer hard drive and then just
everybody's just trying to make pistols bigger. Because people don't know how to shoot pistols.
Not big fan of that.
No.
Speaking of not knowing how to shoot pistols, I posted did I post it? I certainly posted some ones of me at your range shooting, trying to look cool. But there's a funny outtake, and I don't know if I posted. Maybe I did, because I'm not afraid to laugh at myself. But I think I'm fire 3 shots, and then with my big hands I'm squeezing, and I press the magazine release.
Ah, right.
I think I have to turn to you. I'm like, it's not working anymore, and you're like, yeah, you press the eject in the magazine. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Somebody's the new boy in school here. It's me.
It happens so often.
It's
man.
fine.
It's normal.
But I didn't even notice. I was like, click, click. I was like, it stopped going bang.
Yeah, sometimes you just
you were so focused on fire.
Yeah, you can just touch it and
then
it just in some pistols they just drop automatically. I mean the magazines.
Have you heard that John Wick? Apparently that's the thing that he has created now. And that's the side. It to the side.
It looks great on the camera.
Actually, he did it outside.
Yes.
So the old method, the old technique, it's more like you are supposed to do it inside.
In order to reload. Because you're already in the move.
To create a visual for the fresh one to be inserted.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But he does like that extra touch. So he like really gets rid of the old one,
casts it to the side,
and then he goes for the fresh one. But the original idea or the original technique was to go this direction to prepare and to expose the mag well for the fresh magazine to be fit in. But there was I've heard the podcast with
him. Yeah, he was talking about like how Keanu was like, what do you think of this? And now it
has been discussed a lot with the Rogan and with the.
He's going to be in our next episode.
Yeah, say hi to him from me.
Yeah, we will.
There's a thing people ask quite often, and I think we all know the answer, but I think it would be interesting to discuss it again. Firearms companies are, if I give you an example, for example, iRobot, there was a huge presence of Audi. They were presenting their concept of their gun, of their car in the movie. So a lot of people think that there's some sort of cooperation with the real existing firearms manufacturers and the film industry, that they're kind of like trying to push their guns into the movies. So do you have any experience with that?
No, I mean normally that would be typically called product placement.
Yeah.
And so I worked in a Die Hard movie, Good Day to Die Hard, and there was a big chase scene in that, and they struck a deal with Mercedes where Mercedes will provide a lot of the cars at a discounted rate, so the production saves a lot of money, but we've got to make sure a badge gets shown and all that kind of stuff. I have no idea if that would work with guns.
But a lot of people assume that, but as far as I know, it's not really happening.
No. I mean, it seems to be more like something that's fit for purpose. Like so, and I think it might even depend on the armor on the project, where the gun that he's used to, or the thing that
that's for sure
that he likes, or this is what if he's served. This is the thing this is the weapon we use.
Yeah,
and so we're going to use it. And I would like to believe it was more down to the gun being chosen was fit for its purpose rather than like any kind of. Yeah. But I think as gun companies grow, I think of I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more John Wicks or variations of John Wicks, and then there'll be like, if you could get our product in there, because a lot of people, including me, were Googling what's John Wick's gun, and then it's like
that leads you to the Terran Tactical company, and that was the case when the actual product placement, because they made the variants of the firearms.
I mean, my friends and I, we used to think MP5s were just super fucking sexy weapons, and they weren't. They were just on SAS. We'd see videos of SAS, and especially the cropped one with the thing.
The K.
Look at that little one. And it wasn't because it was being put in our face. It was just we saw it and we like, fuck, I like that design.
Yeah.
And it was everywhere in movies, like
sort of sling under the coat and
Die Hard, you know.
Well, do you remember the first time I saw Steyer was on...
Steyer was in Die Hard also, yes.
We were like, what is that? And he puts it together, click, 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 click.
Yeah.
Like, what is that
Steyer,
one?
Aug, Ball Pop.
Yeah. So I think stuff can get introduced, like if the armourer has access or has seen something, he's like, puts in front of the director and is like, what do you think of this one? I'm like, oh yeah. That'd be cool.
My experience is that it's more like visually oriented, so they look at the design from the very outside, and they consider like the scenery and considering if the gun will be like a perfect fit for the scene.
Yes.
Not considering the actual performance or the actual capabilities of the cartridge or the platform, but just a fit to the movie. Yeah. So I remember, seeing myself on the scene, bringing up some guns for the movie, and like 6 different guns in the same category, but one was green. Yeah, exactly. One was black, or the 5 black, 1 green. Exactly. And he's just stick with the green one because he liked the green.
Yeah, and like as an armorer, you'd be like, there's some close combat shooting and he's got to do this, unless it's specifically written into the script that he's got this because it's part of his character. But they would turn to the armorer and say like, we need to do, it's a machine gun, I've got to do this, and you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'll come with a selection that would be good for that, and you could then kind of like, the director would be like, this one's cool.
And I remember myself being stuck in the moment because the green one was the airsoft one, and the rest was just real guns. I was like, this one is not even real. It's like, no, this is not correct.
On Avengers: Age of Ultron, the props department got Bapti, again, kind of the London armourers to the film industry, to come in with a white van with a selection of stuff from everything from hand pistols to a Gatling gun.
Ooh.
And all were they deactivated? No, because they could fire, because they had to fire blanks. And so the prop master came up and said, because I was doing some of these, I've designed more guns. So I had to do these hybrid guns for the bad guys on Avengers: Age of Ultron. So there's a scene where the Avengers are storming the castle.
Okay.
And it's in these snowy woods and stuff, and all the bad guys have got their regular weapons, but they are enhanced by this Chitauri kind of purple alien light tech. So we were taking regular guns and then kind of like fitting stuff to them. So I was doing these kind of Photoshop paint overs of regular weapons, but had got kind of different nozzle or kind of different grip and stuff
accessories,
like that. But the prop master came up and said, we're showing the director a little selection of guns. It's if he likes any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was going down there to take photos for reference, and I went into the other concert room and was like, boys, come down, we've got some toys. And so I'm like holding Gatling guns and kind of all these other machine guns, just kind of looking at stuff. And they got these old boys from Baptiste kind of telling us about all the guns and how they're working and things.
So if you stay with guns, what creation of yours you appreciate most? What gun is like the
masterpiece?
Top, your masterpiece?
Oh man, it's an even split between the Skyfall sniper rifle and the Guardians of the Galaxy pistol, because I was so pleased with Skyfall as a movie when that came out. And it's so beautifully lit, and I really liked the approach to that design, because we came to that design not just on my own, but through the armor and the technician and stuff. And so like it was just kind of finding this sweet spot of creativity, which is then kind of manifested on screen, which I really liked. But then also I like the arc of having designed the sci-fi gun, because again, it wasn't just me like, here's this gun. It's like music, cartoons, and it's just both of them are evenly split, 2 different genres, and both of them I like. One is kind of
Okay, I'll let you choose like 2 instead of 1 this time. But following thing is what we ask quite often is desert island.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we usually ask, what gun would you take to desert island? But in your case, what gun you created, you would take to desert island?
I think it'd have to be the Quill's pistol.
Quill's pistol.
I think I like it strapped to the leg.
Right.
I want to carry around the briefcase.
The big one.
Fold it out every time. I go, no, hang on, I'm nearly ready. I kind of prefer the Clint Eastwood.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
And so the thing is that you are. What I like with this particular episode is that as you are artist, you are more like open-minded to everything. We are stuck in the rules. We are stuck in the technical aspects of the guns. But like any superpowers for the pistol? Like what would be like performance? What would you expect from the pistol? Like the capacity, the power, the knockdown power, whatever. You can, let's open
Of Quill's one or just a Gen 1?
that's the one you take to the island.
Quill's one. I like my comic brain is switched on, so like if I shoot, I want it to leave like this glowing hole through whatever. Then it dropped, but then it's also kind of cool because it's got the stun gun on, so I can just knock someone out.
So yeah, penetration. Okay.
Yeah, glowing penetration, and then also the ability to just kind of harmlessly.
What sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pure laser sound. All right. Well,
and endless magazine capacity.
Of course.
Yeah.
It can be charged from the sun.
Well,
just
there's these like little nipple parts on the end of the gun, and they were going to be battery inserts. So the thing that I always thought that was cool with gun designs was that the more you could interact with it, the more click, chunk, chick,
Yeah.
would be it's cool.
Yeah.
Because that's chunk, cool. Like I wanted that, so that's why the gun animated. So I wanted him to be able to, kind of load the gun, pop out the battery cells, and he could have had them on his
on the belt,
and pop them in again. But I foolishly didn't sell that as the design. But I think I annotated it as like just power cells, but there was no call in the script that he changes them. But I think if we could have shown the director and he can put that stuff on, like so you could show him reloading or doing something. But
there's also those sci-fi guns which are kind of folded, and before you make a shot, it might be charging, and then also the
yes
like expanding before the actual shot. That's another huge topic.
We totally forgot the Fifth Element movie.
Oh,
with the ZF1 was the name of the gun.
Yeah,
it's the ultimate holy grail of sci-fi guns.
Which one is the CF1? Who has it?
It's a Fifth Element. Bruce Willis,
for sure.
Mila Jovovich. It's a sci-fi movie. Come on.
No, I know, but who has the gun?
Yeah. Who has the gun? The Zork. Zork Industry. It's all camouflage from the outside, but then it opens up and it has everything.
Have you seen? There is a guy who I follow on YouTube. I think he's a British prop maker. I forget his name, but he has built.
I saw it.
Fully animated.
I need it. With the darts on the side.
Everything comes out. And I've been watching his build, like kind of workshop build, because he's doing everything in like CAD. And then he's 3D printing. So everything's got servos.
Yeah.
So this gun, where like you see the missile and the barrel and there's little side dart. It all comes out, and the thing on the top as well. It all animates. And then goes back in again. So yeah, that's kind of
that's
the
ultimate combo.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, I will think about some more guns, but I think we mentioned almost all of them.
I would say kind of like perhaps to close with, I think my gun that I wanted, dreamt, and drew, and would have paid cut off an arm to get hold of was the Aliens pulse rifle.
I thought so.
And it's funny because also like there was no internet back then, so I couldn't get a proper look at what this thing looked like.
You have to stop it on a video.
I
used to. There were times when I'd put tracing paper over the TV.
To redraw the shape.
But with the VHS, you could only pause for 7 minutes, and then the tape would go. But now, and I've seen it like in kind of like the movie archives, and of course you can buy replicas of it now. And I think even Nerf did a collaboration with Alien, so you can get the Nerf pulse rifle. It's in yellow, of course, but it's got the digital counter.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it and I was just trying to see if there were any teenage feelings for it. I was like, no, it's kind of like, it was very much of its time for me and very, very influential, but I'm kind of over that one. It's nice. It's lovely. It's kind of...
It's nostalgia.
And it's nostalgia now, yes.
That's the most important feeling I get from that.
But we feel things different now.
We do.
As we grow.
We do.
I have one last question. Do you have any?
No, go
anything
for it.
left? Has anybody ever asked you or told you that you look like kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger?
All the time.
All the time, yeah. Because at some point throughout this podcast, I was really thinking that I'm talking to the Arnold. Really, like especially with your head covering your hair.
I'm not as jacked though.
No. About the face, man.
I used to get like 10 years ago. I used to get Chris Martin because I'm very. For those just listening, I'm a redhead, but very, very fair, with blue eyes. So I used to look a bit like Chris Martin. And I did a film in Canada, and the Canadian crew used to introduce me to other Canadians as Chris Martin, and I would see them double taking because I was a Brit, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, really? Is that really Chris Martin? I didn't see it, but I was like, okay. Or Boris Becker, the tennis player, or recently I've had some friends call me Van Gogh when I've had a bit of a beard.
Right.
Oh yeah.
The ear's still intact.
That's match as well.
Maybe I think if I get stuck on a design brief, I may cut off an ear, but that's the...
Man, there is a lot of videos now on the Instagram made by the I think he's called like a Brian Monarch, who's putting the face of Arnold Schwarzenegger on different people from movies. Man, I just felt like I'm in the video.
You do.
Now.
Yeah,
totally, man. Your smile, eyes.
It must be that chiseled jawline of mine.
You should make a living out of it. Also.
that scene from Titanic.
Just learn the accent and you're there, man.
Get out of here.
I want you to draw me like one of the French girls wearing this. Only this.
Oh, we love it so much.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on our podcast. We had a great time. I enjoyed it tremendously. A lot of nostalgia, a lot of new information we learned. And I hope the guys who are listening also learned a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, as you can hear, there's a lot going on in my head. So it's a bit like there's a lot of stories in there. So like you got to put some rails in, otherwise you'll be hearing about.
Yeah, we covered only just part of what you do.
We got guns and a little bit of personal development in there as well, a little bit of therapy.
I enjoyed every single second.
Likewise,
of that.
It was awesome. Okay, guys, so thank you also for listening to our episode. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and watch some other episodes. We will definitely put a link of your Instagram
Thank you very much.
in the description, so you can go and look for all the concepts and all the work that you do.
Huge inspiration.
Yes. Yeah. So have a great time. See you next time.
Thank you. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.